What's up guys, welcome back to the Zinnia YouTube channel. Today I am going to be talking about one of my favorite Pokemon, quite a newcomer to the elite of Sun and Moon, Cresselia, and I'm going to be joined by my good friend CM Reuniclus,
I'm back on this channel to give my insight.
and we are going to be discussing Cresselia in general. We're going to be going over some notable Cresselia games and just hopefully educate on what Cresselia is all about. So, in terms of how Cresselia is used, you mainly see four variants. So, what I would call the most popular variant at the moment are support Cresselia sets. They have been popping up just with Ice Beam to hit Landorus T, Garchomp, just have an attack. It has Thunder Wave, which means that it really can't be set up on, and this really helps against things like Tapu Lele, things like Mega Alakazam, just like fast threats. Is really good as a backbone, but the biggest part of Cresselia is Luna Dance. It is just such a consistent way to just bring back a Pokemon. You can more comfortably take status. You can you can use Pokemon like Mega Charizard X in the early game, like with Flare
It's just so
Blitz.
strong.
Yeah, with Flare
It really brings
Blitz,
stuff back.
Charizard X is like part of the reason that it's not over the top is that it's gonna kill itself. But with Cresselia being such a good Pokemon on these teams anyway, it's just enabling hyper offense in just such a crazy way. And I'd say the second most kind of prevalent type of Cresselia are not on hyper offense or offense teams, but more on the bulkier side. So Calm Mind Cresselia has been popping up as sort of a similar type of deal to Reuniclus, but for what it lacks in absorbing status, it makes up for in just a dramatic increase in bulk. Reuniclus has 110 HP, 75 defense, 85 special defense, and Cresselia has 120, 120, 130. It's just it's a massive increase in bulk. It allows you to wall out stuff like Mega Medicham, stuff like Tapu Lele. You can actually use even things like Mega Alakazam as setup fodder. There are teams that just have nothing to do about Cresselia because they can't hit it hard enough. You often do need setup to break through Cresselia if you don't have like a strong dark type. And it leverages this bulk to just be a natural offense killer. We've seen it with leftovers mainly, but there's even other options like Psychium Z that we saw so far. It turns Psyshock into a special move and gives you sort of a resistance to knock.
Yeah. I mean, Psychium kind of just lets you burst through Pex, which likes to try to get a Haze or a Toxic off. But
Yeah,
you do lose leftovers, which is a lot of what keeps it alive.
yeah. With
I think recently it's seen a bit of a drop off Calm Mind, just because a lot of teams are prepared for it. It was a lot more popular a while ago.
yeah, that's something we're gonna get into soon. People are prepared for Crest. People are swinging with the dark types this season, but
Yeah, that's very true.
with
So,
leftovers, they are quite important. They're not as important as something like a Heatran or a Tapu Fini's leftovers, but considering it has 8 PP on Moonlight, every bit of passive recovery can help a lot.
yeah, you
And
just want to throw it into everything.
exactly, so for the Cresselias that drop leftovers, that's more of hyper offensive strategies. Rocky Helmet is quite niche. You wouldn't really see that because of the lack of recovery, but on hyper offensive teams there are other options. There's eject button, which is really like potent in the short term. Like Cresselia can take so many different moves, and like being able to just sponge it up and bring in one of your threats. It's unstoppable, really. There's not
One of the
really.
greatest things is you just completely invalidate a pivot move, take a Volt Switch or a U-turn, and they don't get a switch. You get a free switch.
Exactly, yeah. So like this, it's so huge for hyper offense. An eject button is not something that's seen a lot of use throughout the generation, but with Cresselia, this is just another way to use it that has been seen this season in SPL. For more fringe Cresselias, I say fringe, but they are being tested out in SPL, so they're new experimentations. We have seen light clay Cresselia with reflect and light screen. This is just another way that it can support hyper offensive teams. It doesn't drop Lunar Dance. It it actually drops Moonlight. Some Cresselia sets, I'd say probably the main Cresselias, would run Moonlight, so they can actually heal on Tapu Lele, heal the Mega Alakazam Shadow Balls, and it can actually stick around. That may not seem that important for hyper offense teams, but being able to get itself back up to full means that it can position itself to get even more done. I mean, it can spread paralysis, heal back up, and it can live to check opposing Pokemon another day.
Yeah, you
It
also
it
want to
only
sometimes keep it around to like Lunar Dance later in the game. You don't want to use it immediately, and you might need to chuck it into a bit of Cham.
yeah, exactly. Like for other Healing Wish slash Lunar Dance users, I mean, there is the Lunar Dance user Cresselia. For others, I'd say maybe Scarf Jirachi comes to mind, and
There's
maybe
really fringe
Lopunny.
ones. It's like
Like,
Lopunny or even
yeah,
I have
but
seen Healing Wish Mega Latias before.
for these main examples, Jirachi and Lopunny, I mean, you can slap anything on a fourth move of Lopunny. They don't really
Yeah.
have a way to regulate their own HP. You would decide when to fire the bullet, get the healing wish off. Just that's reactive to the opponent. But with Cresselia being able to take so many hits, being able to actually sit on Pokemon, healing off their damage, paralyze it to become faster than them, it can really help you set the pace. And for these Cresselias that drop moonlight, they have to really make it count. So Reflect, Light Screen, Lunar Dance is really going all in on support. And you wouldn't really see something like this outside of the lead slot, but considering that, like, without a healing move, without speed, it can be hard to get these turns off. But Cresselia can get the turns off. It's so bulky that it can click Reflect and then Light Screen and then Lunar Dance. And
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the like screen reflect set, but it does work. You don't really get as much utility out of it. Is the real issue.
yeah, I have mixed feelings on it. I feel like I prefer Moonlight Thunderwave because I mean having Cress's defensive profile, I don't think that loses its usefulness, however offensive your team may be. But Reflect, Light Screen, these dual screen high province teams, they are kind of a different playstyle entirely.
Yeah, I could see having only one screen on Cresselia, so you can fit Lunar Dance, Moonlight, and Ice Beam, or even Thunderwave over one of them.
Yeah,
If it's just like one screen that you need.
it's hard to say for sure which screen can fit a team better. I mean, it is in many ways
It's
that would
team
be
dependent.
yeah, I mean there are definitely Pokemon that would have maybe a better defensive profile physically than specially, but I feel like having Reflect and Light Screen, you're able to react to the opposing team better. I don't think that Reflect Light Screen is ideal, but it is a way that we're seeing Cresselia ran. And another variant of Cresselia, the last of these four, are future sight variants of Cresselia. These are also seen on quite bulky teams. And the idea of future sight is that there are not a lot of future sight users in Sun and Moon. If we're thinking of like the top future sight user, it's probably Slowbro. And Slowbro is
Yeah,
not bad by any means, but it pretty can be pretty dead weight in certain matchups.
we've got the issue of you don't check Medicham with Thunder Punch, which Cresselia does. And Future Sight and Cresselia, it it helps be less passive, which sometimes you can feel, especially with like calm mindsets into dark types.
Yeah, it feels like against these really like hyper offensive strategies, Slowbro just doesn't hit the same. It doesn't have the raw stats.
Yeah,
It has decent stats, but I mean 95, 110, that's fine. Cresselia can do it on both sides of the spectrum. It's better against offensive teams. If you want a Future Sight user, Future Sight is a luxury slot, by the way. Like, it's more of something you want than what you need usually. But like as support to breakers. I mean, you compare your Cresselia with Mega Charizard Y, and I mean, you invest enough into Future Sight, and you can Future Sight, you can go to your Charizard, Flamethrower, and Pex is dead. Like it can really enable these sort of balance teams that rely on maybe one or two Pokemon cores to break through.
Another interesting thing with Future Sight I saw, this was last SPL, but Sky Penguin used it alongside Dragon Tail from on Mega Aggron, which is quite a rare thing. It lets you bring in something random and get damage on it. If it's something like, I don't know, a Kartana, then it's not going to be healed, and that's going to be a lot of damage.
Yeah,
You can just sort of
I
change a game.
think it is quite an interesting application of it. Future Sight is something that is being explored. I would say that it's underexplored, but people are trying their damn best. But it's really held back by its distribution. And Cresselia, it doesn't have amazing special attack. It's not the best user of Future Sight, but it's one of the better that's available.
Yeah.
And something that I think can be said about Cresselia is not strapped for move slots. It has more flexibility than some other Pokemon because for these defensive variants, all you really need to get lots of value out of Cresselia is maybe Moonlight, Ice Beam, Status, and then you're free. You're free to do a lot in the last slot. It's kind of like Megalopony, where it's so efficient with its move slots that the fourth slot you can have fun with, and you can try a lot.
There's a lot of interesting moves. Some that I haven't really seen that come to mind. You can actually run Skill Swap plus Toxic, and it beats Magic Guard users, and it also messes with Gliscor. There's also, I just see on a Hyper Offense, you can run, oh, I don't know what it's called. It bounces back status moves. Now, what is it?
Magic Coat.
Yeah, Magic Coat. I have seen that before. I don't think it's that good, but it's
Yeah,
something.
and we also saw Psycho Shift once with Flame
I
Orb.
never want to see that again.
That's not real.
No.
It just has a lot of moves.
Yeah.
I feel like Trick Room is not something that Cresselia should be known for. I mean, sadly, it kind of is. That's what the old Smogon analysis was. It used to just be Trick
Yeah.
Room. That used to be Cresselia's thing. And even more, sacrilegiously, Choice Scarf plus Trick.
Well, that's another one. Yeah.
Did that set even run Moonlight?
No. You drop Moonlight for Trick.
Yeah, that's. I feel like that is really not respecting Cresselia's strengths. I mean, it definitely put in work on that team. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think to sum up Cresselia, it's able to do a lot in little turns. Like in terms of as a support Pokemon, it's really efficient. But it doesn't need to be. It can take its time. It has recovery. It has the bulk. It feels really easy to use Cresselia.
It's still being explored. We'll definitely find different ways to use it.
Yeah, it can only get better. It can only get better. It's still very new. And that feels
Yeah.
weird to say about a generation that started nine,
6 years ago?
8 years
Oh
ago?
no, 9 years ago. It ended 6 years ago.
Yeah, like this generation's so old. And just from continued play, it really is a great thing.
Yeah.
So, we have we've talked about what Cresselia does, and now I think it's about time we see it in action. So I'm going to pull up a game from week 1 of SPL, Ima versus Fade. And in this game, it's quite a strange team from Ima.
Definitely. It's quite a strange Cresselia set as well.
It was definitely surprising to see, but it's something we have discussed already. On this team, we see. I'd like to call it a hyper offensive strategy, but it's really not. It's not a hyper offensive strategy, but the idea is Magnazone, just trapping the steals to make Altaria, and to a lesser extent, the Psychium Z Cresselia. Cresselia is never going to be a Pokemon that becomes a threat like immediately. It needs turns to set up. But with Steel types removed, some Calm Mind boosts, and Psychium Z, then it can get a lot more done. But I think it's hard to say this team is a hyper offensive strategy.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
have called it that.
but against this team from Fade, this is exactly what Cresselia wants to see. We see this low level of longevity, and these two, Alakazam, Tapu Lele, the Psy Spam core meeting a giant fat psychic type.
This is the matchup that you want to see on Team Preview if you're a Cresselia user.
Exactly, you are just you're hoping to just farm, really. And I mean, even from week 1, we see that although the Tapu Lele doesn't have the exact tools to stop Cresselia, it was prepared for in other ways. Encore on Alakazam is not exclusively for Cresselia, but it definitely had it in mind. I think that it's pretty important to tech on options against Cresselia onto Psy-Spam teams. Like, I feel like it's either that or the team style dies. Like, Taunt
Yeah.
needs to be splashed on. Encore is another way to deal with Cresselia. If you catch it on the right turns, you will be able to set that up quite consistently. Encore is a good method to handle an overzealous Cresselia. I mean, once the Magina goes out of the way, every Psyshock is going to be chipping away. Every Psyshock, every Ice Beam.
I mean, you'd think Ice Beam until you see the Cresselia set. This was what I didn't like about Ima's team. I feel like you really need leftovers, especially in a matchup like this. Nature's Madness Tapu Lele chips too much. You run out of Moonlights too quickly.
Yeah,
Even
Nature's
Hidden
Madness.
Power, I believe it's fighting. It's gonna take ages just to get anywhere without Ice Beam.
Yeah, Ice Beam. I feel like Ice Beam. It looks like it hits very little, but I mean it does hit so much neutrally, and it hits on the special side. That can be plenty important. Hidden Power Fighting is just weaker,
I
and
understand what it's for,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah, it's clear to see that it hits the fighting types. Not the fighting types, it is the fighting type. It hits the dark types. And as important as that might be, like there are definitely ways to just have your team support Cresselia against dark types. There are toxic spikes. Toxic spikes are fucking broken. I mean,
This is true.
dark types do not have longevity on them. I mean, for main dark types in the tier, talking about Tyranitar, Weavile, Hooper,
Greninja.
even. Yeah, Greninja. None of these Pokemon have even smelled a recovery move. Or even leftovers. Like rocks, spikes, patience. Like hidden power fighting, it's definitely understandable, but I think that you're better off just with ice and building your team around these trouble fighting types. And we do see the problem with dropping leftovers in this game. We see it very clearly. Even if it wasn't a Nature's Madness Tapu Lele, it hurts that it is, but that isn't a main Tapu Lele set. We like we see a limit of Cresselia is the Moonlight PP. It's so
Yeah, no
hard.
lefties.
It's so
You
hard to
just
keep it
die too
healthy with
quickly.
no lefties. If it had recover, then I'm not sure if it would have taken this long for people to kind of discover it in a sense. I feel like
Yeah.
it's it's something that's really ugly about it, the Moonlight PP. And we see Shatterpsych to get through the Encore. It is a good surprise tech. I feel like I don't understand why it came out this early in this game. Like, surely the Alakazam would be chipping you down, encoring you back into Calm Mind and going again. And then once you're able to OHKO the Alakazam, it would be better to rip the Z move. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm missing something here.
I do think it was done a bit weirdly. I would have probably kept it for Landorus since you're not Ice Beam. You want the big special move to get rid of it. You don't have
Yeah,
Ice 'em, so
but
knockoff isn't as scary.
yeah, I mean, is the most Alendris in this team can do is knockoff? I mean, the worst you could have would be like toxic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's not urgent to get rid of Lando immediately. I mean, the Moonlights are running low, but yeah, I feel like you'd want to just kill Zam But yeah, like you see, with two Moonlights left, it's really uninviting. I mean, Cresselia can stand up to these side spam teams, but it needs its Moonlights.
Well, I don't like the set that I'm used. I do like the team it was on. It is pretty clear that it's designed to break down steel types, beat fairy types, not fairy types, dark types. And the Magina's probably heal bell. So you're not too scared of toxic.
I will skip to the end so I can see its set. It is a utility Magina. Heal Bell's definitely a possibility. Yeah, Cresselia kind of sat in the back for this one, but what I wanted to show with this game is that it's able to shrug off these moves from Tapu Lele, not even resisted ones. It can shrug off Moonlights. It can take on Alakazam, but it needs to do it in a PP efficient way. It can just run itself out of Moonlights.
Yeah, the Tapu Lele being Nature's Madness definitely didn't help preserve them.
Drakencool versus Taste. This was actually a Cress Ditto. Not like Cress Ditto, that team that everybody loves to spam, but the two types of Cresselia team facing off against each other. And I think that,
This is something I can talk about, this game.
yeah, I mean, Drakencool's team, it like, I don't know what to say about it. I mean, it's definitely experimental. I don't want to be mean about it, but
You might not want to, but I do. I don't understand this team at all. Why is the Fairy Resist a Skarmory and a Charizard which doesn't become a Fairy Resist when it Mega Evolves? It's just a worse version of the Sky Penguin team with Ditto. You don't have the speed control on this. Skarmory just doesn't make sense.
yeah.
But even worse, the sets don't make sense either.
We're gonna watch this one in full because it's a bit more digestible than the first one, and we get to see Cresselia in action in a more compact manner, I suppose. I mean, it's very hard to miss it, essentially. You see Lead Torn against Magiana. Concealed Ruins. Do you remember putting that name on the Magiana?
Yeah, I definitely don't.
Yeah, I remember the team building process for the Concealed Ruins team. But yeah, this is a hyper offense beginner. I mean, not a shift gear one. I'd say what hyper offense likes to run now is calm mind free attacks with plenty of bulk, just as like a stopgap, I suppose. I mean, this hyper offense team from Taste is centered around these two big threats, Charizard, Gyarados, and Magina is, I would say that it's a mix between a defensive piece and an offensive threat in itself. I mean, there are certainly situations where Magina just cleaves through everything, and that typically happens.
We're gonna see that in this game.
That typically happens like against bulkier teams. Once like your breaker has removed something big, Magina just beats out so many bulky Pokemon, it's usually that they have maybe one or two checks to it. And because of its speed, it isn't as flashy versus offense, but that that's not really its intended matchup really. It's like not its intended offensive matchup. Its intended purpose versus offense is kind of to trade hits. But we see Torn lead into the Magearna. Torn should want to get out of here. It does, into the Seismitoad. And commanding turn 1 is good. And then suddenly, it just looks really bad. Luna Dance can do a lot, but rocks damage you after the Luna Dance happens. So for a Pokemon like Mega Charizard X or Gyarados, Luna Dance can't really help with one of the biggest problems, but just this weakening of the hazard game on turn 1. And on turn 3 we see the default Superior try to get right in on the Seismitoad. And just get the rocks off immediately. Try to set up another situation where you can Fluor Cannon into the Seismitoad. And we see this response to Charizard X. There's a Lando there, there's a Gara there. We're not interested in taking the least amount of damage. We are interested in letting Crest sponge up the hit, eject button out, and get something in healthily. It's able to sacrifice its health because chances are this thing can probably still take a hit from something and then Moonlight up. Like, it doesn't need to resist, it doesn't really need to even invest in bulk that much on the physical side. It can just... Chances are, if there's a move and it's not super effective, it's going to be able to just switch into it. Eject button is so good for these short-term situations. Getting Lando in to check the Zard. And the Cresselia comes back in, and that's already an opportunity for it to heal back up. And now it can switch into whatever. It can Luna Dance on command, really. Like, for it to be able to take such big hits, heal itself back up, and choose whenever it wants to Healing Wish up. That's really unique. And it can even spread the yellow magic. That's so annoying for Charizard. You, like, losing the speed tie against the opposing Charizard. Like, just from the get-go, losing outspeeding Lando, losing outspeeding Cress, Magearna, huge. Thunder Wave helps Hyper Offense quite a lot. It's just so instant. The effect is so instant. The speed drop. The lack of consistency of the opponent to be able to click moves.
Also good because hyper offense, especially this one, you're not really faster than everything. Being able to paralyze Alakazam or a Lopunny, it uses a lot of setup.
Yeah,
But you don't even need to set up, you just kill it first.
Hyper Offense in general is not actually that fast, like speed stat fast. It's not that fast. I mean, you see Pokemon like Mega Alakazam. choice scarfers, those are offense things. For hyper offense, you kind of rely on beating your opponent first. With Cress, there's a back door. You don't have to outspeed the opposing Pokemon, or even kill them before they kill you. You can take a hit from them. You can cripple them with Thunder Wave. Like being like giving them that luxury on hyper offense teams, not being out of place. You're not sticking a Chansey, for example. Like this is something quite tailor made, and I feel like there's room for other similar teams to the one Tace is using.
Yeah, definitely.
And throughout this game, it's really decided by the hazard game. How Tace was able to command it, but Crest just being able to get the Lando in safely, neutralize the Charizard. I mean, it can just take the fangs out of like opposing threats, and like it just allows even these hyper offensive teams to have some breathing room, really. And yeah, once Toad Gun goes down and he's able to defog, it's just so finished.
Plasmatoad and Charizard go down really quickly, and at that point, Magierna's gonna win. But especially with the fact that Magierna can just come back with a Moonlight from Cresselia, it's
Yeah.
completely impossible that you're gonna stop the Cresselia and a Magierna that can just come back to full.
Mm. And to get on to Drakenkul's Cresselia, this is the future sight Cresselia we've seen. It isn't able to put on much of a showing in this game. The best it does is throw off a paralysis onto Mega Charizard X.
But technically, it does beat the Charizard, but it's a bit too little, too late.
Yeah, it's hard to say whether it was Cresselia's fault or maybe it didn't have the most drawn out of it, but Crest flopped for Drakencool and Tasis Cresselia, although although it definitely did stuff, it was sort of towards the early game, and then it kind of was able to just sit away. And obviously, McKenna can just clean up this end game. And for the final game that we're going to watch, we have Sky Penguin versus Comp. This is where we saw the Light Clay Cresselia tech. On Sky Penguin's team, I'd say that it's pretty hard to distinguish between offense and hyper offense. I mean, these Lando Serp McGinnis structures, that's sort of a new wave in itself. But for this Cresselia set to work, it has to be something really hyper offensive. So once we see no leftovers and the screen, we can safely assume that it's going all in on this strategy. It's a dual screen Cresselia that drops Moonlight. It's not using either Thunderwave or Moonlight. It's not really going for the same effect of giving hyper offense breathing room. It's, I suppose, more traditional in its support role. You'd see the same sort of expectation like a Tapu Koko, like attack, screens, another support move. In this case, it's Lunar Dance.
Instead of being fast like a Tapu Koko, using bulk instead to get the screens up.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, like I said earlier, I don't think that this is what Cresselia excels at. I think that the best out of Cresselia is like being able to have that breathing room on hyper offense. And I am on turn 14. This was a pretty like this moment summed a lot of things up. In this SPL, we have seen quite an influx in Cresselia, and responding to that, we've seen an influx in sand teams. I mean, Tyranitar, there isn't much better than a Tyranitar in terms of countering Cresselia. The sand cuts the Moonlight. It just shrugs off its attacks. It doesn't really even mind Thunder Wave. I mean, everything minds Thunder Wave, but Tyranitar wasn't really fast anyway. And it has the Pursuit. I mean, Pursuit on its own, Cresselia is fat enough to eat Pursuits, but maybe a Crunch Pursuit Tyranitar, able to crunch it while it stays in, pursue it when it tries to leave. Tyranitar is a response to Cresselia. You bring a Tyranitar, it's good on its own, but if you're considering your opponent might bring Cresselia, then that would encourage you to use Tyranitar. It's the best you can get. I mean, there are other similar threats like this. I mean, there's Hooper, there's Crawdle, there's Weavile.
Ninja and Weavile.
Yeah.
I mean, another big thing about Tyranitar, well, you can eat Pursuit with Cresselia. You're only healing 25% back, and then also Sand Chip, negating leftovers. You can't stall out Pursuit. You do get out damaged, even if it doesn't do that much.
Yeah, it's actually really bad. Yeah, that's true. I guess I was only thinking in terms of like stalling turns with Moonlight and Pursuit. I mean, if you're able to get Toxic Spikes down as the Cresselia user, then you kind of can piss off Tyranitar that way.
You're in a good position then.
I mean, it's certainly not a new phenomenon, like pairing a Psychic type with Toxic Spikes. Like, with the idea of Toxic Spikes being a specific weapon against Dark types. The Dark types are on the ground, their feet are on the ground, they're soaking up poison. And it's just a waiting game at that point. So, Cresselia T-Spikes is definitely something that's seen on bulkier teams. I think it is quite a main synergy with Cresselia, really. But in regards to this influx in sand, I mean, last season there were 13 sands in all 11 weeks. But from just the first half of SPL in this season, we've already seen 10. And it's hard to imagine this as not unrelated to Cresselia's rise. I mean, there were 7 Cresses in all of last season. Cresselia isn't brand new, but it's even more so than last season. It's really getting the limelight this season, and with this influx in sand, we see Sky Penguin actually not running the standard Mega Charizard X with Flare Blitz, Earthquake, Dragon Claw, Dragon Dance. He actually techs on Brick Break. And this sums it up. It's some really entertaining mid-game or mid-season reactionary building. It's reacting to the trends. But to think that
it landed this game perfectly.
Cresselia is rising up Tyranitar, and then Tyranitar is causing Charizards to want to run Brick Break. Brick Break is a horrible move on Charizard, but if it lands into Tyranitar and Tyranitar's everywhere, then it becomes an option. But to see this domino effect in action, I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this game, the Brick Break wasn't enough. I'm conscious about how long this video has gone on for. I mean, we see a misclick here.
And the main issue in this game was it was turn 2 or 3, I think, where Sky Penguin missed. Yeah, it was turn 2. We missed a Focus Blast on the Excadrill, and if that hit, I think he probably won pretty much on the spot. No Excadrill, and he has Sugar Berry for the Garchomp, which came into revenge. That's 2 Pokemon that will just be dead.
Yeah, it's pretty unclear how to safely revenge this Shucker Magearna. Yeah, that's awful. I'm trying to use this as a chance to talk about the Charizard and the Crest. How about we talk about these Focus Blast Common Mind Magearnas that have been popping up and just destroying everything and getting haxed.
I think a set actually goes really nicely with Lunadance Crest. You've not got the power points on Focus Blast and Fleur Cannon, and you've not got the longevity if you're not running Pain Split, because Lunadance kind of helps with that.
Yeah, so for these Magearna sets, I guess I haven't talked about how Magearna and Crest directly link. So with a lot of these Calm Mind free attack dropping the Pain Split variants, you'd see a Pinch Berry, like an Aguav Berry, like you gain the 50% back when you're under 25. With Luna Dance, that kind of frees up some other stuff, like Leftovers. Leftovers is good for it. like within a guava berry, you get your, what would it be? Your 8 turns? Your 8 and a bit turns of leftovers? But that's just a hard limit. I mean, with leftovers plus Lunar Dance, it makes you more resistant to chip damage. And another way that we can see this reduced reliance on pinch berries is Shuckerberry. Like Cresselia, the best way to use Lunar Dance is to give these Pokemon that kind of rely on conserving their health, like a beginner without recovery, and giving more freedom to use that HP. Like it would be able to trade hella damage and then later on it comes back in with a Lunar Dance. And Healing Wish isn't exactly like a completely brand new concept, but for like Cresselia, like no matter what form it is in, even these reflect variants that aren't they that don't really hammer in the point of Lunar Dance and like choosing when to Lunar Dance. Even these variants, they are able to get the job done. I mean, just natural stats, Lunar Dance. It's really good to see a home for this sort of strategy. It's not in the main meta game of Sun and Moon to be able to just bring back these low longevity threats. And I guess to close off the video, I'd like to mention that although Cresselia is really exciting this season, because we get to see pretty much like a new like variant of Cresselia each time we see it. It's not doing well. It's very prepped for. I
Actually didn't see it
encourage.
at all in week 5.
Yeah, we didn't
Yeah,
see it at
every
all.
game, pretty much
People
every
are
game.
sick of Crest now. But I
There was
encourage you, the viewer, get on the Pokemon Showdown ladder, load up Cresselia on the unprepared ladder, and see how easy it is to farm points. I think that enough has been said about Cresselia for now. I
maybe
hope,
we'll revisit it after SPL.
yeah, we I think we probably like made a whole dissertation on Cresselia at this point.
Yeah.
There's not going to be anything to revisit. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.